big deal in South Africa's history. The first time a democratic former president has handed himself over to police. He will spend a night behind bars in a democratic South Africa. And as you know, Jacob Zuma was incarcerated by the apartheid police. He's spoken about that over the past couple of days, on Sunday in particular, and even previously when he appeared in the High Court in Pietermaritzburg, saying he was not afraid to be jailed because he spent years behind bars. But this is a democratic South Africa, so this is something that will go down in our history books. JJ, let me bring you back into the conversation. It's very important to have this discussion with someone like you. And as I'm saying, you know, history here. Jacob Zuma is handing himself over to police to spend a night in jail in a democratic South Africa.
Absolutely. It's the end of the road in many ways, in that, let's be clear about it, right? Jacob Zuma has been running away from the law for years, man. You know, his case, I've even lost track, whether we're talking 2 decades or what is it. He's have multiple cases all over the show, using state money to defend himself, etc. In part of the conversation in the country, Shahan, people who I've spoken to, right, and high-placed people, who are saying this is probably the only time you're going to be able to jail Zuma, because his strategy would have been to keep out of jail forever, right, in the day, right? And it was a misstep on the part of his legal team to undermine the Concord process, because in a roundabout way, all of the things that he's standing trial for, now he is going to prison in this painful way. It's not something to celebrate from a point of view of being human. It's something that says, at the end of the day, all of us have to account one way or another. And you know, some of the arguments that are being made in their papers, you know, about justice, etc., are valid. It's just that in this case, can you really argue that he was not given an opportunity to state his case and say, guys, please don't jail me because of the following reason? He was, right? And he's now coming late in the day. And I would like to hear, you know, what the explanation, for example, about this late application would be, other than being a desperate last-ditch effort. You always have to give a person a last chance to appeal to authorities. But Jahan, I think, in a sense, it's a landmark day that whose implications are going to be severe and are going to be serious for all of us about how we approach jurisprudence, how we approach the law, but also how we implement the whole issue of the rule of law, taking it out of theory into practice.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for that, JJ Tabane. I think we can get Mzwanele Manyi, he's the spokesperson of the Jacob Zuma Foundation, back on the line. Mzwanele, thank you so much for coming back to speak to us. You kept your word. I've just checked your statement, of course, via Twitter, saying that the former president is, in fact, handing himself over to authorities.
Yeah, we can confirm that that is the situation, and I've heard this a lot of nonsense. JJ has been talking. He's talking a lot of nonsense, but I'm not going to get into that. Safe to say, it's a lot of nonsense. President Zuma indeed has gone to hand himself over, and he's doing this just purely for compliance, not that he has what you call it, acceded to what is being handed down to him. He's doing this just to be seen to be complying with the law. He is a law-abiding citizen. This must never be misconstrued as an admission of guilt. President Zuma is not admitting any guilt whatsoever, but he has to comply with the law because that's what the law requires. So that's a situation that we have.
Yeah.
We are sitting with a situation which is not very different, really, from apartheid situation, where it was the law to be incarcerated without trial. So President Zuma is incarcerated without trial. Travesty of justice, a real erosion of human rights, of a human being, a freedom fighter, as it were, has been failed by a democratic government, has been failed by the by the constitutional democracy, as it were. It is really a very sad situation that's happening in the country right now.
Okay, I'm going to respond to all of the things you said in a moment, but I want to first get the facts about Jacob Zuma and where he's going to hand himself over.
Look, I think I can confirm with you, I know exactly where he's going to hand himself over, but I don't think it's in my place to confirm that because I don't know what are the considerations for the correctional services people, but I do know where he's going. But I don't think I'm at liberty to disclose. I think you can call Siba at Correctional Services. I'm sure he'll be able to confirm for you.
Can you say whether it'll be at a police station or correctional services facility at least, because of the time?
Correctional services, correctional services. He's going to end up at the correctional services tonight as per the Kampepe order. So the Kampepe order has won the day. So he's going to be going there.
Well, many would argue that the law has played out its course and, you know, it was given consideration in the proper manner.
Well, that's the matter that is in abeyance, as it were. This is why we've got the date, the 12th of July. That date, 12th of July, is where that statement that you are making will be put to test, because we sit here as a foundation, we are saying the law has been put aside, as it were. I mean, even if you were to look at the judgment, there are some very funny statements in the judgment where the case has been characterized as extraordinary, so that you can put away the normal procedures, as it were. So President Zuma did not go through normal procedures, went through extraordinary procedures. And in our understanding, judges don't make the law. Judges implement the law. But if you've got normal procedures that are legal prescripts, and you've got judges that decide to deviate from that, it's a problem for us as the foundation to say, what is going on here? If you've got a judgment that says that issues around appeal are too protracted and all of that, we've got a problem with that. If you've got a judgment that says this person, we know his behavior, we know that when we do that, when we give him this, he's going to do this, and they do all kinds of postulations in terms of how they think he's going to respond. And they say, based on what we think is going to respond, there's no point in giving him any opportunity to respond and all of that. Let him go to jail, as it were. That's the kind of system that we have. It cannot be characterized as a fair justice. We have very clear, beg your pardon, we've got very clear sections in the Constitution that this judgment has violated. And by the way, this was pointed out even by other justices, as it were, that if you go to a few sections, one of them is section 12(1)(b), that says detention without trial is prohibited.
But he was found to have been in contempt of court by a majority of the justices, and that was the punishment that they saw fit, because he did not make representations to the Constitutional Court, even though he was asked to.
I think it's important to understand what was a step before that. A step before that is a step where this court agreed to make itself a court of first instance for a matter which is not in the exclusive jurisdiction of this court. The matter that President Zuma was taken to Recusal court in the first place for is a matter that belongs elsewhere. Why is it that the Constitutional Court allowed itself allowed a situation where it entertained a matter that is not spelled out? By the way, the mandate of the Constitutional Court is not some guesswork. It's clear. It's spelled out in the Constitution. Section 167, paragraph 4 is the whole list of things that they are supposed to be doing as the Constitutional Court. In that list, the issue of dealing with court orders and criminal cases, civil cases, is not part of the remit of the Constitutional Court. Why did the Constitutional Court in the first place entertain a matter that they should have advised DCJ Zondo to open a criminal case against President Zuma and let him go through a trial court? The Constitutional Court is not a trial court. So President Zuma is now being sentenced without even going through a proper trial. This is a travesty of justice. This is not what people of this country fought for. This is not what this liberation was for. We are now regressing back into the apartheid era. We're now regressing into the dark ages. It's a very sad situation. Democracy of South Africa is being eroded by this kind of sentencing.
And that's your sentiment based on so many things that many people in South Africa would disagree with, because, you know, the Constitutional Court is the highest court in the land, which is why we have the Constitutional Court. We have a constitution that was drawn up by our struggle heroes who understood exactly how it was going to work. Many would argue that Jacob Zuma has been disrespecting that constitution by all of the moves he's made. But JJ Tabane is joining this conversation with us, Mzwanele, and I'd like him to jump into this conversation so that we can take it forward. JJ?
Before he jumps in, I think it's important to differentiate two things. The supreme law of the land in this country is the Constitution. It's not the Constitutional Court. The Constitutional Court is just one of the apparatus. The important thing, when we talk about the constitutional democracy, we're talking about the rule of law. We're talking about the supremacy of the Constitution. Judges cannot act outside the constitution of this country. The reason we're having a rescission process going on now is because there's a case on hand that it could very well be that Constitutional Court misdirected itself. In fact, I would argue it is a misnomer that you find a situation where in a constitutional democracy, you have things like majority vote by judges. This thing is not allowed in Parliament. In Parliament, because we don't have a parliamentary democracy, even if we have the majority, that decision must still pass the constitutional master. Why is it that we have a judiciary that has got a decision that when you put the constitutional master, it doesn't cut it, but because the majority judges agree with it, therefore it must pass? That is totally not what the constitutional democracy we're told is supposed to do. Everything must pass the constitutional master. We can't have a situation where in Parliament majority cannot do something that is not consistent with the Constitution, but in the judiciary you can have judges that do things that are not consistent with the Constitution, and I can give you verse and chapter of the things that are not consistent. The first one is the one I gave you, Section 12(1)(b), that says detention without trial is prohibited. But this Constitution has done that. This Constitutional Court has done that. Second one, in the Constitution, there's clause 35 in the Constitution which gives people the rights. You've got the right to remain silent, all kinds of rights that you get there as an accused. Then the Constitutional Court decides that no, he's not an accused. Therefore, those rights don't accrue to him. But then they give him a sentence that is normally given to the accused people. But all the accused people would have been given those rights to a whole range of things to ensure that their rights are not eroded. So as we sit here and now, a criminal that has shot and killed people, a criminal that would have molested children has got more rights than President Zuma, and his only crime was to ask for a neutral chairperson. That's the only thing that started this thing, and it morphed into this has morphed into what he's dealing with right now. That which is happening now is something that happened at a secondary level, at a primary level. And by the way, this is what even Justice Chapter puts into context to say, he uses the word substratum in the judgment, that the substratum of this thing is what happened in that commission. The issue here is that the Constitutional Court allowed itself to be used as a court of first instance when we had other avenues where Justice Zondo could have taken this matter. This is why we have a mess like this in this country. It's really sad.
Yeah. JJ?
Mzwanele, you know, if I had the choice between listening to Mzwanele's argument and listening to 7 Constitutional Court judges who have gone to school to understand how the law has to work, I will certainly listen to those Constitutional Court judges. Let's deal with one or two matters here. First of all, I think that the legal team of Jacob Zuma and himself and the foundation are vulgarizing this whole issue of detention without trial. The reality is Jacob Zuma was given more than 2 chances to talk about his own situation. He was given the first chance when the commission went to court to say he must be compelled. He could have gone to court to do that and stop those justices from making decisions that are against him. He was given a second chance in March to say, should you be found guilty, what should the sentence be, tell us about your situation, etc. Right? So it's not like he was treated the same way as an apartheid government took somebody without putting them in through the legal process. So it's a vulgarization and so on. And I think the Constitutional Court judges are going to see through that on Monday. We can do whatever PR we want, Mzwanele. At the end of the day, those judges on Monday have to be convinced by legal argument, not hyperbole, not comparing yourself with Sobukwe clause and so on. There's nothing like that. Remember, the issue about recusal of judges is not a uniquely Jacob Zuma matter. It happens every day in our courts. People ask for recusal. Sometimes it's granted, sometimes it's not. Imagine if all of us, if a judge refused to recuse themselves, we will be recalcitrant, we will not listen to court orders. That, for me, is the issue. It's a democracy. You can argue all you want, but at the end of the day, there must be a final arbiter. A court system cannot be a perpetual debate. This is not a high school debate where people are just debating for the sake of it, you know, for and against. This is a constitutional rule of law system where you and I must subject ourselves to the court. The reality is Jacob Zuma, even if you may have sympathy for his particular position, he refused to appear before the courts twice and wrote them letters and insulted them and rounded them up as people who are simply angry, recent label, or that are simply bored. He accused the judges of being bored and so on. And now he wants those same judges to have sympathy with his case. Really, that's where we are. The issue of the rule of, and you have your right to have your own opinion, right, about how the judges are looking. Even the judges themselves disagree, like you have said. But you cannot vulgarize the system by saying, right, that if majority of judges at 7-2 find a decision, they can't make a decision unless they are unanimous. There's nothing like that in law. That's what is nonsense. Jacob Zuma has gone to many courts in this country where there was more than one judge ruling on the matter. And in a number of those cases, at the Supreme Court of Appeal, where there's often 5 or 3 judges, not all of them agreed, right, with him being made to go scot-free. There are numerous cases where Jacob Zuma has gone to court and majority decisions were taken to get him to go scot-free. We didn't hear him complain that, no, not all the judges are in agreement, therefore I can't get off scot-free. So I think you are grabbing at straws, quite frankly. It's a sad day that we have an elder statesman having to go to prison. I don't think anyone would want him to just be incarcerated for the sake of it. But we have a choice to make in the country now, right? A rule of law is not perfect, but it's certainly, I'm not being told what the alternative would have been. First of all, Jacob Zuma set up a commission of inquiry himself and waited 3 years before complaining. No, keep quiet. Let me finish. I gave you a chance. I listened to you. I respected you. You called me nonsense, and I did not interrupt you even there, right? Jacob Zuma put a commission of inquiry in place in this country. He then comes 3 years later to say that he doesn't like the person who's chairing it, after he listened to 300 witnesses implicating him in wrongdoing. That's the nub of the issue. Why would he not go there? Why, after that particular recusal was refused, did he not subject himself to the law like all of us would have to when a recusal application? Finally, Jacob Zuma, in his own papers that are going to the court on the 12th, says he got wrong legal advice. Tell us what that wrong legal advice is. He was advised wrongly in which regard? In which regard? Secondly, he's saying he left the State Capture Commission to go and take medication. That is only being raised now. I can tell you now that that doesn't sound true. Why did he all this time, in the letters he wrote subsequently, never raise the issue of why he left the commission, that he almost left it involuntarily? That's the nub of the issue here. And I think that it's a sad day, but like you are saying, let's see whether the court on the 12th will rescind its decision. But all indications are that they will not rescind that decision. Maybe they will rescind maybe they will lessen the sentence. We don't know. But I think that as the council of the commission said yesterday in conclusion, you cannot simply choose which laws you will obey, when you will obey them, and how you will obey them. All of us have to respond to the same laws. Thank you, Shahan.
Yeah, Mzwanele, you want to respond?
Yeah, no, look, I think JJ is emotional. I think one of the first thing, let's start with the issue of education. The apartheid rulers were highly educated people. Verwoerd himself was a doctor. Trenacht, that was heading Bantu Education, that announced that Afrikaans must be a medium of instruction, was also a doctor. So education is important, but the fact that people are educated does not mean that what they do always enjoys moral authority. So let's not confuse moral authority and wisdom with educated people. People can be very educated and they can do very repulsive things, as it were. So let's not parade education as if without it there's no wisdom and there's nothing else, as it were. What we're dealing with here, we're dealing with a situation of justice which has been totally not carried out. This is what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with a situation which we thought we're correcting by getting into the new democracy. And I think it's important for JJ and everybody else not to confuse issues. You see, people just like talking dinner table discussions, which they elevate into lawful discussions. Dinner table discussions must end at dinner. There are two types of courts that people must just be aware of. There's something called a trial court, and there's other kinds of courts. Like the Constitutional Court is not a trial court. So, and the fundamental difference is that in a trial court, like you get a whole range of things in that court. You get a right to call witnesses, you have a right to remain silent, all kinds of things apply there. That's where proper justice happens. And if you're not happy with that, then you can go to the Supreme Court of Appeal up until you come to the Constitutional Court. But if a case skips all those steps and starts at the last point where it should be ending, what happens to all the things that should have happened in the lower courts? So those things don't happen to you. So therefore, you're being processed. You're actually a half-baked product, as it were, because you have not been processed through the justice system as envisaged in the Constitution. This is the travesty that we're talking about. That if you decided, for instance, not to go to the Constitutional Court or whatever, Justice Jafta was very clear to say when cases like that happen, there is a remedy for that. That is not punitive. You do what he called a coercive committal, as it were. So in other words, there should have been something that had been put there to say, maybe give him an ultimatum of doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, failing which this happens and all of that. That's a kind of a judgment that was supposed to have accrued in this case. But the justices of our country decided for President Zuma that no, if we do that, if we're doing it this way, in terms of his past experience, he's likely to do this. They decided for him. And after having decided for him, they decided that, okay, we're going to do this, he's going to do this, and therefore, because he's going to do this, this is the outcome that must happen, as it were. So you have that situation here. That can't be justice. And by the way, JJ talks about this commission, and they keep making this point that this commission, its fundamentals in the first place are not in place. The constitution of this country, the supreme law of the land, is very clear about how this commission should have been set up in the first place. No. And it's another point that as a foundation we have a problem with, that if something is messed up at a foundational level, then that thing is messed up. This commission should have been appointed by President Zuma, should have been set up by President Zuma, but instead he played a clerical role They had a 50-50 joint venture with Justice Mogoeng, where he selected the judge on the recommendations of Thuli Madonsela.
Yeah.
And the recommendation was that we shall give President Zuma a list of one, and he can't move from that. And therefore, President Zuma just did a clerical function on this thing. So therefore, even at a foundational level, this commission was not set up properly, as it were. Even in its execution of its role, it was meant to be doing the issues around state capture and all of that, where President Zuma was accused of having abdicated his executive authority. So what this commission should have done is to have summoned the entire executive to go and account in terms of how they experienced President Zuma as somebody who, for lack of a better word, had abdicated his responsibility and had created a puppet state, if you like, where strings are pulled elsewhere. The whole executive should have been there to go and account whether were they able to run their departments as per the mandates of the law, as it were. All 34 ministers should have been there, but they were not there. All that has happened in that commission, truth be told, is just to unravel an important thing, which is corruption. But even in that instance, we've got institutions that are better placed to deal with that issues of corruption, because even what you see, there are some people that have got similar kind of charges. Others are persecuted, others are left scot-free. So even the criminality that is unearthed there is not treated uniformly, as it were. That's why that thing, all those criminal cases in our view, they should just be taken to the NPA. NPA must deal with criminality, as it were. The star witnesses that were there were meant to go and give a star witness about state capture. They went there, and there were three key star witnesses as I sit down. There were three key star witnesses. The first one was Feiki Mento, who went there and wasted a lot of our time, spent 3 days there describing all kinds of perpendicular couches and all kinds of things, instead of coming up with evidence for the corruption that he was talking about. This is the essence of what has created hatred for President Zuma, because people said he's corrupt and all of that, and then when they were invited to come and give evidence, they all failed. Feiki Mento went there, and even the aeroplanes that she said took her from Cape Town to OR Tambo, there were no trace of that. The AXA went, and the SAA tried everything under the sun to try and get a record of that. They couldn't get, as it was. So at the end, she ended up even withdrawing her affidavit after she had messed up President Zuma's name. Then enters Themba Maseko. He also makes all kinds of allegations about President Zuma having said, go and help these Gupta brothers. I don't know what is corrupt about that statement, by the way, because as a DG, you're the admin officer, you're the head of administration, you are supposed to help people. President Zuma never said to him, break the laws, do everything possible, break the laws and all of that to make them get whatever. You know, he goes and makes all these kinds of things and creates an impression that President Zuma was corrupt by saying he must help people. Absolute nonsense. No such a thing. He makes allegations that he refused with a 600 million rand budget, when in fact he should tell South Africa that as a CEO of GCIS, you've got no final say on the advertising spend of government money. But he creates the impression that he refused. He refused nothing. He had no 600 to refuse with. In the first place, GCIS budget, even as we speak, is not even 600 million. But Themba, he says he had 600 million that he refused with and all of that, and therefore he must be touted as a hero. Absolute nonsense. No such a thing. Then we move on to Pravin Gordhan. He also made all kinds of statements about corruption and all of that, and he was taken up to the CNN Hard Talk, Aman Poor. That's a very good journalist that South African journalists must actually learn from. He asked him a very direct question. He says, Mr. Gordhan, do you have information that President Zuma is corrupt? And the answer was no. But there are people talk and all of that. So a lot of the issues that have been put under President Zuma's head to characterize him as a corrupt man, as we sit here and now, there's been not even a shred of evidence to corroborate all those allegations that they have made. So Bishop Jonas talks about the 600 million and all of that, and next thing he doesn't even know which of the brothers gave this to him. The Hawks ran after him for months on end, trying to get him to make a statement.
Can we come in and engage you?
He's not found. So all these people that have been making these allegations have not been to the commissions to back them up. But President Zuma today is treated with disdain because a narrative of a corrupt old man has been put. A narrative of somebody that is an outlaw had been solidified in the people's heads. And what we have here is an innocent man, a 79-year-old man that is now going to go to jail for a crime he did not commit, somebody that is going to go to detention without a trial. What a travesty of justice.
Shahan, if I may, I mean, I hear you, Mzwanele. I wish I was hearing all these arguments for the first time. The reality is we set up a state capture commission. President Zuma set it up himself. And his first address to the nation when setting it up was to call on all of us, right, to respect it, to go there, to give our information, to give our perspective. And he was actually doing it with glee. In Parliament, he said that people who set up this commission will regret. This is not the words of a man who thought that this commission was set up badly. In fact, I like what Tulima Donzela said recently, that in fact, if it's true that President Zuma and Zondo were friends, President Zuma was hoping that that relationship will come in his favor in as far as that commission is concerned. I cannot disagree with that sentiment when I listen to you. Because how do you wait for 3 years? How do you wait for R1 billion to be spent and then say, oh, by the way, you have been off on a wrong tangent. Me as President Zuma, I think that you should throw away that R1 billion and because this commission was set up wrongly from the start. I mean, that's as illogical as it can get. Let's be clear about it. Let's be clear, Mzwanele, that you've quoted 4 or 5 witnesses. In any commission of inquiry, there will be a % of witnesses who are declared unreliable, who are declared not so useful for the commission, who won't even be quoted in the final report. It happens in every commission. It's not unique to this particular commission. So to quote 5 witnesses out of 300 and rubbish them and then say Zuma is innocent must be the most ridiculous thing that we can.
You know,
it matters not because there are 40 witnesses who implicated Jacob Zuma. You quote 3 or 4 who implicated him. The Guptas have run away. No, keep quiet and let me finish.
Give a name.
No, let me finish.
Give a name of a person.
Mzwanele, we gave you 15 minutes to talk. Can you just respect the conversation, right? I know that you can do that. Just respect the conversation. You are saying here, you want the viewers to believe that out of 300 witnesses who testified at the commission, out of 40 who implicated Jacob Zuma directly, out of the Guptas running away, they must deduce that Jacob Zuma is innocent. And you're talking to us as if we were not here when these things were happening. We were here. We know that Jacob Zuma sold the family silver to the Guptas. They are not here to account. They have been chased by Interpol around the world so that they can come and tell us how they managed to strike 60 billion rands of the fiscus, right, under our noses here, enabled by the likes of Jacob Zuma. Jacob Zuma has refused the chance to come and answer truthfully in front of that commission. He went to that commission, and for the whole week, he told us about all sorts of stories about spies and conspiracy theories, and half of the time he said he doesn't remember anything, right? Let me tell you something about your legal strategy. Your previous legal counsel, Advocate Sikakani, said to the judge, I will appeal you until kingdom come. So he actually told the judge what they were intending to do. They were hoping that the judge was going to go to Protea Magistrate Court, be appealed to the Bloemfontein, and it would be the time of the commission would have been over. Everybody realizes, right, that we may not like it, but everybody realizes that Zondo was not going to go to 5 courts and fall into the trap of a Zuma who doesn't want his day in court. We all know that, right? But set that aside. At the end of the day, you can't tell me that it's correct for us to wait for 3 years and then come and throw away R1 billion into the dustbin and then not get the truth. If it was truthful, what Zuma is saying about this whole commission, being tainted by this relationship with Zondo, he should have raised that on month 1 of the commission, on year 1 of the. He waited 3 years. Zondo wrote him 26 letters to appear, and he found a way of not appearing. I'm sorry, but it seems like he brought all of this onto himself. The Constitutional Court, yes, is not a trial court, but the Constitution does provide for contempt of court. Right? Let's forget about all the other things. You and I cannot defy courts and think it's okay. Our justice system is structured in such a way that you are given every opportunity to state your case at every court. And this is what happened here. You are giving us an impression that they just woke up one day and sentenced Zuma to 15 months. It didn't happen like that. Let's be honest about it. He himself admits in his papers that he received bad legal advice. That, for me, is the bottom line. Shahan, I think, honestly, we've had, all sides here, and I'm sure this debate will carry on. I respect Mzwanele.
No, don't close it. Don't close it without giving me a chance to respond.
I respect Mzwanele's own views about this, but frankly, we are done here. The reality is the constitution of this country has to be respected by all of us. We all have to be equal before the law, even if we may have sympathies for each other. And what Zuma has done here was to essentially show the middle finger to the Constitution, show the middle finger to his oath of office that he took twice. That's why the Constitutional Court had to ensure that they go out of their way to send a message. Because if you are a president of a country, there's a higher standard that's expected of you. You can't say that it doesn't matter that Jacob Zuma took an oath as an MEC, as a president twice, and still cook a snook at the Constitution. It cannot happen. We are all equal before the law, and unfortunately, it had to come to this. The ANC's NEC itself has washed its hands of his own comrade. Right? Is it because they don't like Jacob Zuma that much that they have said that let the law take its course? No. It's about the fact that we have to make a choice at this point. We have to make a choice as a country to even with our favorite people, to say, unfortunately, we have to be on the side of implementing the rule of law, not on the side of political patronage. Thank you, Shahan.
Mzwanele, I'm going to give you a chance to respond, but hold on before you go. Like you said, how our journalists should learn from international journalists. Can I please ask you to learn from spokespeople as well and keep it a bit short? So I'm going to give you 4 minutes.
No. You see now, that's exactly the problem that we have with you guys. You let JJ waffle up and down. After he has done all his waffle, you want to limit me. And you didn't limit his waffle.
Go ahead. You're wasting your own time.
The first thing that he says, Advocate Kakane said you will appeal, the commission. I mean, that's an insult to an advocate, the senior counsel that knows that a commission like this you review. It is important, a choice of words, because it's got serious implications. Kakane said he was going to review, not appeal. And now JJ introduces magistrates' courts just to sensationalize the thing. This is the typical problem with media, that you take little information that you know very little about, you blow it out of proportions incorrectly. That's the first point. The second point, he makes a proposition here that seeks to suggest that President Zuma woke up 3 years later. What a lot of nonsense. President Zuma raised this issue of the wrongness of this commission, and he took the matter to court and all that. The only problem was when the Ramaphosa administration came in and took that matter off the roll because President Zuma, they could not continue to sustain it and continue to fund it, and that's why this thing fell off. So it's not like he just woke up now. This is the propaganda that has been done against President Zuma's name, unchallenged, as it were. And then he carries on to talk about 300 witnesses, but he does not even remember one that has said anything of substance. This is the problem, that the media in this country, with people like JJ in the forefront, they talk a lot of waffle, they don't substantiate anything. It's a very simple thing. He must say X, Y, and Z said this, and here was evidence that was put. All we had there, in fact, I only mentioned 5, or whatever, because those are the ones that time allowed for. I can carry on to the others as well, if you were to permit me. I can tell you now, there is not one person there that said anything of substance, anything that you could corroborate that implicates President Zuma. They all say all kinds of things, but when you say to them, right, give us evidence. In fact, Judge Zondo has been very good on that part, to say, can people please bring evidence to the things that they talk about? They don't bring evidence. And so to then say President Zuma is guilty and all of that without substantiating that, it's totally incorrect. For the past 3 years that have been there and all of that, if there is all these monies that have been lost, a quick question that must be asked is, where are the institutions of this country? Where part of what should have happened in that commission, by the way, the Reserve Bank. I mean, how do you take 60 billion out of the country without the Reserve Bank knowing about it? How did that happen? Where was Speaker when all of this happened? So, and we want these answers. If Guptas have done what they are purported to have done, they must be brought to justice, and the law must take its course. And it's a pity now that even this Interpol that JJ is talking about, we've just seen some retraction from the NPA to say, no, that was not correctly said and all of that. But this is what happens in our media. Things that just get blown out of proportion, and the issue of quality of information from media is a problem. And I think media must try and improve on the quality of information. What you say to people must be fact-checked before you tell people lies. So we're sitting here with the President Zuma that has been created as this monster that does not want to, that thinks is above the law, and in fact, and instead, the truth be told, and the truth is that President Zuma is treated with disdain by a whole range of institutions. He's not given all his rights. His rights get taken away, and I must close by saying that in 2021, to have a 79-year-old detained without trial in a constitutional democracy is scandalous. To have a thing like that, it's quite scandalous. 2021, constitutional democracy under a black-led ANC government, you have one of the freedom fighters of this country that is incarcerated for 15 months not for killing anyone, purely because he wanted justice, he wanted neutrality, he wanted fairness, and that has been morphed into all kinds of other things. And now tonight he's sleeping in some cold place, a 79-year-old. How cruel can people get for somebody that all he wanted was fairness, was neutrality? That's the only thing that he wanted, and it has come to this. I think we should be ashamed of ourselves in this country. We should be ashamed that the constitution that people fought for is being used in a manner that incarcerates innocent people, incarcerates people without a fair trial. It's really scandalous what has happened in South Africa.
All right. Are you done, Mzwanele? Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. Mzwanele Manyi is from the Jacob Zuma Foundation, and of course, JJ Tabane is one of the anchors at ENCA and political commentator.